stands out?
They all do certain things pretty good. One of the things about the tight end position in this particular offense is you've got to kind of be versatile in the fact that you've got to be athletic enough to flex out and play as a receiver and stretch the field vertically. And then you've also got to be more blocking oriented from the backfield, which it's a skill, especially when you're a really tall guy like Jordan, who's got to get under people and be a lead blocker at times. And then you have to play an attached tight end, which is attached to the line of scrimmage, and from there. So the job requires a really difficult skill set to master all of them. Some of these kids do a really good job flex, for instance, and when you ask them to be attached, they're maybe not quite as good, or vice versa. And so it kind of takes a while to develop the things that they're not good at, and develop that and attack that.
Speaking of that, Garrett, I was surprised when I was looking back at the stats the other day. Didn't catch a pass last year. Great at blocking. How do you get him more involved in the passing game, or is that even a plan?
Yes, that's a plan for us, because if you don't, you end up getting tendencies on, hey, when he's in there and he's not getting it or whatever, and they can double somebody else. So he's got to develop that skill set, which he's worked extremely hard on, and then you got to have confidence that he's in there and can do it, and then he kind of does it. So look forward to him having those opportunities this year.
With what the receivers have been able to show what they can do, how do you see yourself utilizing the tight ends with having so much talent there?
Well, probably one of the biggest things is in a lot of the progression reads that the quarterback, that Deshaun or our quarterback will go through, the tight end's probably one of the first reads that he has, simply because he's usually closer to him, and he either comes open or doesn't on a lot of different routes. So that's really how his progression usually goes sometimes. And it's not every play, but majority, a lot of them. And so just guys understanding how to work and get open, and then also being able to get him the ball at that time.
Mylan Richards, one of those guys. I'll look at him. He looks great coming off the bus. But,
oh, yeah.
How do you get him to that next level?
That's what I'm charged to doing. And I look forward to working with him this year and him having some success and growing from it and developing and having confidence. Yes, a lot of these kids come in and they some kids come in and they think they're world beaters, and all of a sudden it gets tough and doesn't go their way sometimes, and you got to kind of grind through that. And this year looks to be a good year, hopefully, for Mylan.
What do you want to see out of that group coming into fall camp?
I want to see consistency. I want to see not a drop off behind legged. I want to see, a group of guys that really are team oriented, because that's one thing. You guys, along with everybody else, are sitting there saying you got this guy and that guy, and this guy gets the ball and that guy gets the ball. But the bottom line in our offense is we've got to go back, develop the chemistry amongst our offensive unit, in which Tony and Jeff done a good job orchestrating that, and then those guys are being effective as a team and being humble and work hard at it.
If you didn't know better, you'd walk up to Cannon Smith out on the football field and think he was a guard.
Oh yeah.
How does he use that size to his advantage, and where do you see him kind of fitting in?
Being a physical blocker at the point of attack. We play quite a bit. There's plenty of opportunities for third down opportunities out there. There's third and shorts that you're going to get into the game. There's plenty of opportunities for him to play as in blocking capacities. But then also he's a pretty agile guy. He'll deceive you some for a big guy. He runs fairly decent for a big kid. So he's fairly athletic. He can turn his body and go get it. So hopefully he'll come on this year, and we look forward to good things from him.
So what about special teams? What stands out to you as the biggest improvement after the spring on special teams?
Our biggest thing is we've got 6 phases that make up our special teams, and in some of those phases last year we were pretty good. Greg Hugh was pretty good at kicking field goals. We were pretty good at field goal block, and we were middle of the pack in kickoff return. But there's also some glaring areas that we've got to get better at as a collective group and own it. And we've worked really hard this offseason in addressing some of those issues and getting kids on there that not only understand it and realize the impact of the game that it'll take, and then work as a collective body to improve in areas such as kickoff coverage. Our punt has been pretty decent. We've been middle of the pack in punting, but then obviously punt return has been, getting somebody to actually give us a returnable punt has been been something that college football has changed probably more so in the last 5 years than anything. You know, I think we had 100, I think my stats were we had 113 potential punt situations where we were returning the ball. And out of those situations, I think we had actually 13 returnable punts that were punted to us. And so you got to go back and you got to look and see, you know, what are we doing, and then what are we doing it with? Are we sound schematically, and then getting the kids to effectively produce on Saturday for you.
I watched a video on Frank Beamer a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about special teams, and he said sometimes it's as much a want to as it is talent.
Yeah.
So how do you kind of make those two mesh, getting talented kids out there, but the ones that want to go do it?
Yeah, that's something sometimes you don't find out till they're out there, and that's usually too late. You know, sometimes for a young kid to realize, you know, probably you didn't play them and didn't have the skill set. Obviously, if you're a returner in high school, you can be, and you're good at it, you've had a skill set that developed it. But I don't know how many of these kids that we sign actually are on their high school kickoff coverage team, you know, or on their high school kickoff return team. And probably one of the hardest skill sets to develop is a frontline kickoff return guy. You know, there's a big difference in a linebacker dropping to a spot to a drop than a kickoff return guy dropping 35 yards and then taking on a guy. So you have to spend time actually teaching technique and developing that, and that doesn't just come overnight sometimes with these kids.
Is there anyone on the coverage team or on the kickoff return team that specifically stands out to you as doing a really good job?
Oh, the guy last year that was really good for us was Dorian O'Daniel, and he was a kid who's kind of been on the shelf for a year or so, and then all of a sudden, but he did an excellent job for us last year in special teams, and I think he was our special teams player of the year. But I mean, he's a solid Eddie guy, and then usually what happens is these guys develop under kind of an underground swell, and then all of a sudden they start playing linebacker position, which Dorian's kind of worked his way into the defense this season. So it'll be interesting. He's going to play some special teams too.
How excited are you to get a guy like Feaster back there on?
Oh yeah, you know, you look at Feaster, and you know, some guys. That's the other thing. You know, is trying to make sure that you possess the ball. I think that's got to be our number one issue, simply because, you know, if you're sitting there in our shoes, you're saying, hey, let's get the ball back to us offensively, you know, and so possess the ball is critical. And so, you know, be interested to see how he catches. You know, I think that's a huge thing. And that's why sometimes punt return, you give up a little bit with a dynamic guy sometimes simply to say, hey, let's possess the ball. And so Artavius Scott, Hunter Renfro are kids that I know that can field the ball, you know, really well, and they'll get good opportunities this season for us in that round. Using Wayne Gallman some on kickoff return, you know, would be an advantage to us now that we have even more depth at running back. You know, things like that we sit around and talk about and work at. So those are things that we all work at in fall camp to see who are our guys, who gives us the best opportunity, and then kind of plug them in and work at it.
Speaking of Hunter, will he be the backup punter, or do
You
you
know,
want
that's
Spires to
one
come
thing.
in?
He was our, you know, the darn kid. I mean, he's athletic. He can catch it, and he punts a pretty decent little ball for not working on it as much as he does. But he was our backup punter. Hopefully this year, you know, we can find another guy. Carson King is a kid that's out. We have Will Spires, and then Michael Batson's out. Are the three guys that hopefully can develop and give us some depth as a punter, and obviously Andy staying healthy and continuing his punting.
Easiest way to solve the kickoff coverage, obviously, is to find a kicker that could put it in the end zone
Correct.
every time.
You know that, but you know,
Any luck there?
Sometimes, you know, we've had a couple kickoff tryouts in the spring, and then I'm interested to see Skowski. He's a kicker. I'm interested. You know, he's a linebacker soccer kid. I'm interested to see if he's a viable candidate. And then obviously, you know, Greg and Alex Spence are guys that'll be in those roles right now as we go into camp.
I think people don't understand the job that Greg did last year.
Oh, they have no idea. Well, you know, take Greg for instance. He does a great job at kicking field goals last year. I mean, comes out of nowhere to be a really solid guy when we cross the 50. But probably the worst thing he did was kick extra points. You know, it's like me out here trying to make a 3-foot putt sometimes. I mean, you know, you snake one in from 10, but you can't make the 3-foot putt. So all those things you go back and look at and really emphasize with all those kids. But, you know, Greg's done a good job for us, and anticipate him doing another one this fall.
I wanted to ask you about DJ Greenlee. That's a kid that gets overlooked a lot, but I've heard, Coach Sweeney mention him a lot, Coach Elliott or Coach Scott. You mentioned him now.
He's been, I would say, DJ's been sort of inconsistent up until the last 2 weeks of spring. And I use the word inconsistent, because he'll shine at some points, and at some points that you think, it's a fairly easy situation for him to handle, and he didn't. So as a coach, you try to go back and say, what really generates this guy to being out there? And so, but he has had a solid, into spring and summer. So I'm anxious to see what he's capable of this fall.
Do you have nightmares about that Alabama onside kick?
Yeah and no. Part of that, you get in that game, and the kids played their hearts out, and you wish there's something different you could have done or prepared them for. You think about it in those realms. But as far as nightmare, that's behind us as far as that goes, and look forward to this season and the challenge of putting it together again and making another run through attack our conference.
Can I get a breakdown? I know sometimes people think Danny Pearman's just in charge of all special teams, but you've got, Venables maybe on kickoff. How does that all, who's got what responsibility?
I just really am in charge of the meetings per se at times and organization of it, but we have direct coaches, which coach assigns each year to particular teams, and